Hello everyone, welcome back to the Looney Bin. My name is Looney, and today I'm going to be ranking a tier list of some of One Piece's, I guess most popular ships. They're just ships I just randomly remembered that people do ship within the community and decided to just put them on here. Some of them may not be ships that people actually ship, but they're ships that at least people think or know kind of exist. So while your ship may not be in here, because I just thought of any ship up the top of my head that I could put in this, and we're gonna rank them. We're gonna rank them from S, A, B, C, D to crack ships. Crack ships, for those who don't know, are just ships that like people just put two characters together because they like the aesthetic, or they have no like connection within the story, but they just like them because it's two hot characters. Oh my god, they probably have hot smutty sex or something like that, right? But that's what I'm gonna be ranking each of these ships. I'm gonna give you a brief explanation as to why I rank them the way I do, and I'll try to be as unbiased as possible. So hopefully it doesn't be weird, or doesn't go off the rail with some of my own personal interpretation and opinions of what makes a good ship and what rank each ship probably goes into. Okay, so we have a couple of ships here. I got like, I don't even know, I'm just gonna assume 24. I think this is like 34. I can't count. Let's go with 30 ships here. We're gonna rank them. I didn't put them in any specific order. I just thought of whatever ship and just put them here, so we're just gonna go to each one. And so let's start off with, I guess, Luffy Nami. For those who don't know me and my channel, I'm a big supporter of Luffy Nami. I think by far out of any ship that I see here, this is very biased of me, so for the just to get it out of the way, Luffy Nami I think is an S tier ship. I'm a big supporter of Luffy Nami. You could disagree with me. You could put it in any slot that you want. Let me know what slot you think Luffy Nami belongs to, without just completely just hating on it. But yeah, I just wanted to get it over with. I'm probably going to get over with a lot of these ships that I maybe like and don't like. So yeah, Sanji Nami, without being completely, biased in regards to Luffy Nami, Sanji Nami, I think, definitely had the potential to be a great ship. The issues that I have personally with Sanji Nami come mostly from the fact that they're kind of opposites of what each other's preferences kind of are. Well, specifically Nami's. It comes off to me that whenever Sanji goes into his love mode, his love gag, the female characters who see that don't necessarily reciprocate, but the female characters that he doesn't really do that to, at least not in a constant basis, he is unaware that they have feelings for him. So that's why, to me, Sanji Nami they don't fit the idea of what I think Oda's writing is for a ship. But I think that if Oda does decide to want to do it, if he decides that that is his own preference, that he prefers Sanji Nami, in the core of Sanji Nami, I would probably give it a C, maybe a B, but I'll put it as a C just simply because they are friends. They do spend a lot of time together. That's definitely one of the biggest factors of any ship that I think can work in One Piece, where time and a close bond can really be effective. It's just there's so many like negative aspects to it, like Sanji, peeking, his constant like going after each and every female character. It doesn't appeal to Nami in that certain way, if I go off by my interpretation of Nami's character in general. But if it wasn't for those things, if it wasn't for the peeking, if it wasn't for the love gag, I think Sanji Nami could have been a fine ship that people would be, like myself, would be okay with shipping, that they wouldn't be bothered by it. But it just comes off with so many different things that just, for me, negatively, they don't fit and mesh well, I guess is the best way to put it. I try to find the right words to say it, but like I just don't see them meshing well at the end of the day. But of course, your opinion could be vastly different from mine. Luffy Hancock, aside from the age gap, because I know the age gap is like a huge, big issue with this ship, I definitely see it as an issue, but Oda doesn't necessarily give a damn about it, so I'm not going to like give it some discredibility. I can't freaking speak. I'm tired. Been working 6 days a week. But in terms of Luffy Hancock, you know, Hancock does love Luffy. She definitely does. I do think she doesn't know him that well to an extent. She has this fantasy version of him. She doesn't necessarily know him to the extent that maybe other Luffy ships, the other female characters that have a Luffy ship in it probably do. But Luffy Hancock could work if Oda really tried very hard to focus on it, specifically in the time skip, where instead of, you know, preventing Hancock from seeing Luffy during the 2 years, if Oda actually allowed Hancock to actually visit Luffy constantly and they bonded over those 2 years, then we could be talking very differently about what I think Oda's going for. He didn't do that. He didn't do anything aside from like expand Hancock's feelings for Luffy. Luffy's side, there's really nothing. That's why I don't, you know, ship it. But if I had to choose a ranking for them, to me at least, the one-sided gag, which is also really much Sanji Nami as well, I will probably put it on the same tier. I think the one-sided love stuff that even Oda mentions that he likes to poke fun at it, he doesn't necessarily, I think, take it too seriously. I think it's a C. If Oda built more upon, like, during that 2 year time skip, I think we'll be having a different conversation. I just don't see it, right? Zoro and Nami, to me, they don't have that romantic connection. I think they just don't have any sort of like romantic sense in, like, maybe an interest in each other romantically that maybe could go beyond what I think the way Luffy Nami's emotional connection is, which isn't necessarily romantic. It's just a very close and more personal bond with Luffy Nami. Zoro and Nami do have a close bond, but like they're not that, I think, that deeper in their connection and their emotional bond compared to Luffy Nami. So I can't really see Zoro and Nami as like a really good ship, because aside from like a few moments here and there, they don't really have those romantic moments that, at least in my opinion, I can see. So for Zoro and Nami, I'll probably rank C as well. If Oda really wanted to pursue it, I think he could, and he could make it work. I don't know. It just, there's really nothing there. Sanji Pudding, like I mentioned with the Sanji Nami stuff, I think because of how Sanji initially when he first met Pudding, he had, he did the one-sided love with her, but as the story progressed in WCI, you notice slowly that he stopped doing that, right? And the opposite effect happened, where Pudding started to act very much like how Sanji would with other female characters. So that shows to me that, like, the more the female character has an interest in Sanji, the more they act like that, and the more Sanji's oblivious to their romantic feelings. They kissed. I think Sanji Pudding, especially with what happened is happening in the current manga, where Blackbeard has captured, I think is going to continue. I think Sanji Pudding, at least for Sanji's character, I think is a good A ship. There is that age thing, but like I said, Oda doesn't give a damn about it. Trust me, look up the age between Kami and Hachi. You will see what I mean. Aladdin and Prowling. Trust me, Oda does not give a shit about that. But yeah, Nami Vivi. So Nami Vivi, to me, I never saw any sort of romantic connection. Nami Vivi shippers definitely do see some sort of romantic connection with their bond. They see that Nami shows a little bit more closeness to Vivi during the Alabasta arc, which my interpretation of it is that since Nami was the only female member of the Straw Hat crew during the time, she couldn't connect properly with like a more on a more personal level, because she's not going to talk to the guys about like certain things that maybe she's going through, something that she's now doing with Robin. That's how I interpreted Nami and Vivi's relationship. You don't necessarily see anything on Nami's side that could point to romanticism, but like I said, people who ship Nami Vivi do see something there. I personally don't. In terms of a ship, what I would rank it, because there's not a lot of time between them except for like one arc, I'm gonna put it as a D, just because in order for me to see this ship as something very strong compared to every other ship, there needs to be more. You know, Nami was happy to see Vivi on the news, happy that she was saved, but so was Luffy, so was a lot of other characters. So it's like, and Vivi doesn't really show like any sort of concern with or like is worried about Nami. She's more worried about Luffy from the scenes that you do see, like in one of the more recent episodes. If Oda wants to do it, he can. I have no issues with it. I think Nami Vivi could be a good ship. There's just nothing there for me in my interpretation of the story that could really be like, oh yeah, this is a really high-ranking ship. They just don't spend too much time. You only have one arc with them. There's not really much there for me to really put it anything higher than a D. At least with Sanji Nami, Luffy Hancock, Zoro Nami, at least they have and spend more time together because they're part of the story, you know? You see them more often than you do see like Nami and Vivi connecting. Zoro-san, Zoro Sanji is the most popular One Piece ship of all time in many different statistics, whether it be fan art, whether it be people who support them. I'm just gonna base that off statistics and data. I'm just gonna put it as an S rank. That's all I'm gonna say about it. That's all I'm gonna say. Luffy Sanji. Luffy Sanji to me. If you ship Luffy Sanji, I mean, all the more power to you. Sanji doesn't necessarily, see Luffy in that kind of context. I mean, Sanji doesn't like guys, from at least how Oda is presenting him. You never know if Oda might change his mind. Luffy Sanji, it definitely isn't. If we're going with the Yaoi ships, definitely not something that I will put in an S rank. I will put it, honestly, I'm stuck between C and D. I will put it, because WCI, it did help a lot for Luffy Sanji fans, Luffy Sanji shippers, so, and they do spend more time, so I guess I could put it there. Time getting to know characters, or having characters getting to know each other through time, is essential for me in the way I think ships work. So that's why I'll put it as C. Sanji Viola, definitely people support it. Again, time, there's not a lot of time. The time they did have was impactful. But he did have that love gag. Viola does seem to have like some sort of feelings, but then after that it just disappears because you don't necessarily see them together. You don't even get like a, if I remember correctly, Just Rosa was a pain in the ass to watch every week for me, but I don't remember if they ever had any sort of resolution. I put it as C, because at least there's some sort of like reciprocation between the two of them. Zoro Tashigi. I think Zoro Tashigi is possibly the strongest Zoro ship. I would put it as an A. They just, there's a whole connection with Kuina. Zoro does get flustered around Tashigi. Tashigi gets flustered around Zoro. They have like this weird vibe connection with each other that could lead to something romantic. It's just Zoro tends to never showcase any of that towards just her or any other female character, but he does get more flustered around Tashigi than anyone else, and that's possibly due to Kuina's how Tashigi looks like Kuina. So I will say I will put it as an A. Definitely not an S rank. I will definitely put it as an A. Zoro Hiyori, definitely something that Oda definitely tried exploring, especially in Wano. especially with Hiyori's crush on Zoro. I know it's an anime filler, but Zoro literally gave no shits at all when Hiyori said that she was going to miss him. But it is filler, so I'm not going to really count that. Zoro Hiyori, I think, is a good B ship. Because there's a lot of connections there with the whole history of Wano, with the Shimotsuki clan, Kozuki clan. It is Shimotsuki, right? My brain is fried. But yeah, I would put it as a B. Zoro Perona, I will say this much in my argument against like Luffy Hancock and how like during the 2-year time skip there wasn't really time spent with each other, at least from what we know. Zoro Perona actually did spend time together during those 2 years. So from all the Zoro ships, they literally have that time spent together that I'm like, yes, that is very important for any ship, right? So it's like, I know people will be like, no, they're like, you know, brothers and sisters, you know, sibling, because, you know, Mihawk is like the dad, and Zoro and Perona are like the siblings. But Perona does miss Zoro, and she does kind of have like that feeling of like, I'm gonna miss him, you know, that kind of thing. I would put Zoro Perona as a C, just simply because we don't know exactly how or what their relationship was during the 2-year time skip. What we do know is that she cooked, she took care of him, she spent a lot of time together with him. You know what? I will put it as a B, just simply because of those factors. Because at least they spent a lot of time together. Well, Luffy Zoro. I think Luffy Zoro, if Oda ever did a Yaoi ship, I think is a really strong one. I do not think it's stronger than Zoro Sanji, so I would put it in the B section. Just because I think that if Oda ever did any sort of Yaoi ship, Luffy Zoro would be high up there. But it still doesn't compare to like Zoro Sanji. Chopper and Milky. We know very little about like their relationship, aside from Chopper being really, really interested in having like a crush, maybe love to Milky. Milky, I think, kind of reciprocates. In terms of like time, they spent a lot of time in those couple days in Zoe, you know, curing everybody, her being the nurse. I would put it as a A because it just seems like that's going to be the Chopper ship that Oda would like doing. Robin Frankie. Robin Frankie is that ship that, like, and I'm going to say this because it's just how it is. Robin Frankie is that ship that when people say no romance in Straw Hats, they never mention it to Robin Frankie because they think it gets canceled out by the fact that Oda did a what if scenario, keyword what if, about Frankie and Robin being the mom and dad, which then he, you know, retracted and said that Frankie was the grandma after Jinbei joined. It's a weird thing that the fan base has with Robin Frankie. I do think, though, Robin Frankie, out of all the Robin ships, they do have the best connection out of any Robin ship. So I would actually put that as an A. Not yet quite as an S, but I would put it as a high A, so I would just put it here. There's a lot going on. There's a few hints that could be possible, but at the end of the day, there's nothing concrete. There are hints of it that I think are worthwhile in checking out. You know, they spend a lot of time as members of the Straw Hats. That whole speech about Frankie to Robin maybe hit her core very hard. Not in that weird context, but you know what I'm saying. Like, the idea that he told her that no one is born to be alone, that really hit her hard emotionally. So I think that really left an impact on her, and that's really could be like the key part of how that relationship came around. Luffy Robin, I'm sorry, it's a crack ship. There's no romantic anything with Robin Luffy. I know there are Robin Luffy fans out there. I'm sorry, it's a crack ship. There's just nothing there. She's very protective of him. Luffy, again, is protective of his crew. But there's nothing there that speaks to me like this is like a serious romantic relationship that Oda could pursue. Robin Law. Robin Law isn't a terrible ship, I think. Robin Law, aesthetically, very similar to each other. They have a very similar interest to archaeology and history. Very interested in the poneglyphs. There's a lot of connections and commonality there. I do not think it's better than Robin Frankie. Mostly because, like I said, time is very important for how I view ships, and Robin Law really don't spend a lot of time. They do in Wano, they do in Dressrosa, but it's never been in a way that linked to me, at least romantically. I would probably give it a C. Honestly, I'll probably give it a C. I will say that it's probably the second strongest Robin ship. I just don't see it going above a C. Nami Robin, nothing. They're best friends, so I'll put it as a crack ship. Nami Karina, film filler. I know there's a lot of people who saw something within that, and I could see why they saw it. Like, I personally could see why. I actually personally see that more than Nami Vivi. So I will put it as a D in terms of an actual ship that could be possible if Oda goes for like a Yuri, or like, you know, Nami is or Oda chooses Nami to be a lesbian. Just since it's a film gold filler, I don't see it like being a possibility. But I'll just put it as a D just cause. Chopper Carrot, crack ship. Literally Carrot calls Chopper, bro. They like, I know the sibling argument is one of the most bullshit arguments ever made, but the fact that Chopper allows her to call him Chopper, bro, you get that sibling vibe with them. But like I said, if you like it, you like it. Don't let the sibling argument get in your way of shipping something that you love. This is just my interpretation of it. Nami Usopp, best friends. I do not see anything romantically linked. They're like the best guy girl pal that like get into some weird shenanigans, and there's no romantic bond, I think, or any sort of romance that comes out of it, because Usopp definitely has feelings for Kaya. So to me, it would be in a crack ship, but I'll put it in D simply just because I know people do like their relationship a lot, to the point where like they think like, you know, it's one of those scenarios where like the best friends turn to lovers trope that could happen. I just do not think it's possible, simply just because Usopp has Kaya. So, and Usopp Kaya is definitely something that like Oda really is trying to tell you that like, yeah, you know. And really, like, if it wasn't for Kaya, you could definitely have an argument, because they have that friendship bond that could lead to more. But they don't act the way like you would think like there's some sort of like romantic undertones, or like, you know, will they type of trope type of thing. So yeah, I'll put it as a D, just because I don't necessarily think it's a crack ship, because there is something there, just not. I just wouldn't put it with a crack ship. Luffy Usopp, best friends. But I don't think there's any legitimacy to it. I'll leave it as a crack ship, because again, Usopp has Kaya. If we're talking Oda chooses to do yaoi ships, it doesn't beat Zoro Sanji or Luffy Zoro, honestly. Luffy Law, it's definitely higher than, I think, Luffy Usopp. I would put Luffy Law as a C, simply just because the relationship between Luffy Zoro just kind of goes above that, because, you know, the Straw Hats, they know each other a lot more. Luffy Law definitely has that, like, that tension that, like, I guess you could. It's hard for me to explain this in a way that I can really be thoughtful. The yaoi and the Yuri ships are really the hardest ones for me, but people love Luffy and Law. They do. My only issue with it is that they really like make Luffy like into more like the one that gets dominated. You know, who's the bottom, I guess, of the relationship. I guess that's the best way to put it. But people love it. I'll put it as a C, just because if it was a yaoi ship, I would understand why people would ship it. Hina Smoker. We don't know much about Hina Smoker, and we're probably getting into like the low level ends of like a lot of these ships. Well, maybe not all of them, but Hina Smoker, actually, at least from the color spread, we see them going on a date, and they're, you know what, they're like, their personalities mesh really well, I think, So I would put that as an A. I think Hinosmoka is a, you know what, I'll put it as an S because I think Hinosmoka is actually a really decent ship. You know, it definitely seems like they knew each other for a very long time. Like they've been there since like the very first days of they were marine training, and they even going on dates apparently. So it's like you definitely could feel that sort of vibe with them that like could really be something. And their personalities mesh well in my personal opinion. Kobe Hibari, it's cute. I really enjoyed Kobe Hibari, especially with the way Hibari has a crush on Kobe. Kobe just dense as hell. I would put that as an A. I'll put it as an A. Kobe Hibari is an A. Kobe's just dense, and I can't wait to see how Oda fleshes that relationship out. And we'll see. Big Mom and Kaido, hell yeah, S tier baby, woo, hell yeah. You know they were doing things. They knew each other since the Rocks Pirates. They probably had children together, maybe, I don't know. It's never been confirmed. But like, damn. Kaido Big Mom, top tier ship, hell yeah. Okay, no. I'll put it as a D because they're like two pirate buddies that get drunk together and then maybe hook up once in a while, like maybe one time, and they're like, bleh. I see nothing. Luffy Vivi. The thing with Luffy Vivi is that Oda kind of deconfirmed them and it's like some sort of like party he had with the voice actors where like even Luffy's voice actress said that if Luffy was ever going to fall in love with somebody, it should be Vivi. But Oda was like, haha, no. Like he legit emphatically told her no, and that was the end of that conversation. Yeah, she was upset. But like, Luffy Vivi, there is something there. And now that we've seen more of the whole Emu, Joy Boy, Lily, Vivi connection, I think there's a lot more legitimacy with them. I don't think it's bigger than like for example Luffy and Nami's relationship, simply just because there's not a lot of time. Like the time they do spend is very emotional, and you could definitely see some sort of romantic vibes. But again, it's one of those things where it's just like you need more. You need them to spend more time together to get that romantic feelings out more, or have that sort of vibe that could lead into romance, I think. And to let everyone know what I mean by romantic feelings, I mean something like a relationship that could lead to it being romantic, not necessarily it being like full blown like what Luffy Hancock does. Because sometimes a lot of romances tend to be feelings hidden within small cues, small things that they do. An example would be like Luffy Nami, Luffy sharing food with Nami, something that he rarely does. Luffy giving Nami the straw hat, something that he rarely does, So I would put Luffy Vivi, despite the fact that Oda declined it. I still think that there's a possibility he could have changed his mind. To me, if I had to look at Luffy Vivi's relationship as like a legit ship that if I would ship, I would probably put it as a B. Honestly, out of the Luffy ships, you know what? No, I'll put it as a C. Because Luffy Hancock at least has some romantic things from one side. Luffy Vivi, not necessarily so. So I'll probably put it as a C as well. Robin Zoro. I know people love Robin Zoro. I personally just, aside from like a very few scenes, I do not see that romantic interest in them. It's still, I think, one of the more popular Robin ships. I think it's second. No, I don't know. I would put it third, just behind. It's man, I'm gonna get a lot of people angry at me. But like, I'll put it third amongst Robin ships. I'll put it as a C, just because at least they have time and spend together. But we don't necessarily see those moments that they spend. You see a few times where Zoro does save Robin. Aside from that, yeah. Luffy Rebecca, I'll put it as a D. There's definitely a fondness from Rebecca for Luffy. I just do not see it being like a real legitimate thing. It's very similar to like Luffy Vivi, except with Luffy Vivi, at least there's a lot more connection than with Luffy Rebecca. So I'll put Luffy Rebecca as a D. I wouldn't necessarily call it a crack ship. It will be like a D, at least a D in my opinion. Luffy Shirahoshi, again, a D. I do not think it's a crack ship. There's a whole connection with the Void Century and a lot of other stuff. So I'll leave it as a D. It's not necessarily crack ship level. Rayleigh Shaki, S tier, baby. I know, I fully predict I know what's going to happen within God Valley. Rayleigh's going to save Shaki, and Drew, you're going to see something good. You're going to see a really good ship that they're still together. I know there's a lot of people who have issues with the way that Shaki told, I think it was Usopp, how like maybe he's hanging out at another girl's place, and that Rayleigh said that he likes young girls. I think both of them were just joking and not actually taking it seriously, because if they were taking it seriously, they wouldn't still be like really close to each other. Maybe they have an open marriage, I do not know. I just personally don't see Shaki really being a really good ship based off what we do know so far in the flashback, and the fact that they're still together despite possibility that they have an open marriage. I have no idea. But in terms of a ship, I think it is a very strong one in terms of One Piece. And yeah. Capone and Chiffon, S tier. They're married. Their relationship, they have a good family bond. They enjoy each other's companies. They love each other. Really good ship. Really good bond. Really well done. I really enjoyed Oda's perspective of their relationship. I think it's really well done, so I will put that as an S. Mihawk Perona. There's a lot of people who love this ship. To me personally, and this is my interpretation, I think it's a crack ship. I do not see it being a legitimate ship. She's about 20 years younger than he is, again, but the age gap doesn't mean shit to Oda. Yeah, because friggin' Shaki really there's a big age difference there too. He just doesn't give a damn about it. So I still put it as a crack ship. I do not think there's anything legitimate there. Sanji Robin. Again, Sanji has, infatuation with Robin, but it doesn't go beyond that. He treats her very similarly to Nami, just there's not that extra thing that I will put it above Sanji Nami. Sanji Robin, a D at least. Luffy Reiju. So, I do not. Aside from the kiss, there's not really anything else. Or not kiss, CPR. There's not really anything else that I can really say about it. I will probably say that it's a crack ship. I mean, we saw a color spirit like Reiju was like really like kind of flirting with the Shigi. If anything, she might be bi, in my personal opinion. But I do not see anything going beyond just their small interactions. Honestly, I just do not see it. Now, what would be funny is if Oda decides to try to do something or maybe tease Zoro Reiju. Now, that will be interesting and freaking funny, especially because of the whole, Reiju is Sanji's sister. So that would be funny as hell. But no, Neo Manchetti. This one's an interesting one because, to me, it's very funny. They kind of have that relationship and that bond that I think Luffy and Nami do. The only issue is that they act very similar to, or they have the one-sided love gag. But I do not think it's as severe as like Luffy Hancock and Sanji Nami. I would probably put it as a C. But it's very, very weird. It's like they have a more personal, emotional connection that is more than just a one-sided love. Actually, I'll put it as a B because I think I do see something there. At least from Leo's side, that there might be something there. But I can't really do it from anything connected to Sanji Nami and Luffy Hancock with the one-sided love stuff. Because at least with Nami and Luffy there, it doesn't seem like there's anything that they do to reciprocate the same feelings. Sabuquala, well, I swear, Sabuquala have a very similar relationship to Luffy Nami, as well as many other ships that are canon, like Oden Toki, Ida and Harold, that Sabuquala definitely do fit, as well as this relationship that and bond that Luffy Nami have. But I swear, people seem to think that Sabuquala has nothing like Luffy Nami, despite the fact there's so many things that do showcase very similar aspects to them. They, Sabo and Luffy, both reckless characters who go out and do reckless things, and then you have Nami and Koala, who bring them down, who ground them, and try to make sure they don't do anything stupid. Yes, Luffy and Sabo are two very different personalities, but they do share that same dynamic. I will put Sabo and Koala as an S tier, because it is very similar to the relationship dynamic that I think Oda enjoys a lot. Shanks and Makino, assuming the baby is Shanks's and Makino's child, I think their connection that they had that we briefly saw was really well. I would put it as an S tier. Shanks and Mihawk, people love them, best friends, hot together. I think it's a crack ship though. I'm sorry. I don't see any connection there whatsoever. They're just the best of friends who are rivals, I should say. Ace and Yamato, they had some connection. They really did. I cannot put it as a crack ship. The only reason why I would even put it as a crack ship is because Ace is dead. So it's not possible anymore. But I'll put it as a D, just because I think the way they connected with each other in that flashback was really well done. And you could kind of feel kind of like some sort of vibes with them, but nothing above a D in my opinion. Usopp Kaya, S tier. Literally, it's very much the trope of the guy going on an adventure and then one day coming back to see the person he loved the most after becoming or going on this vast journey. It's a very common adventure trope. It's literally what they're doing with Usopp Kaya. It's gonna be fantastic when Usopp reunites with Kaya. I think their bond and the way they are together, really S tier. Buggy Alvito. I'll give Buggy Alvito a B, simply because I think Oda kind of is pushing that a little bit. We don't know yet because we don't necessarily see it, but I think their bond very much has some sort of like ship level potential. So I'll put Alvito and Buggy as a B. Vivi Koza. I think that out of all the Vivi ships, I think Vivi Koza is probably the best bet, but we don't know. Again, we don't know exactly how Oda is going to be connecting everything together with the Void Century and stuff like that. I will put Vivi Koza, best childhood friends growing up to lovers trope. I'll put it as a B. At least in my own personal opinion, we need to see more. But they definitely have that childhood friend to lovers trope. And they both love the Kingdom of Alabasta. That shared love can really bring them together to become a really great rulers for Alabasta. Zoro Kiku, man. If Oda was ballsy and based, shit, Zoro Kiku would be flying off the shelves. The only issue with Zoro Kiku is that aside from their first interaction, there's not much there, and Kiku definitely has some sort of infatuation with Kinemon. I can't put anything above a D, so I'll just put it as a D. I'll put it as a crack ship. I don't think there's anything big there. Luffy Uta. One of the things with Luffy Uta is that it is from a film filler. I know that Oda definitely showcased Uta in the actual story. We don't know exactly how far, but I just don't see anything there that could lead to something in the story, at least, unless Oda decides to introduce Uta into the story. But I do not think he will. And the events of film Red do not exist. Very similar to how, like in Strong World, the one that Oda wrote, the events that occurred in Strong World do not occur, but the emotional connections and the bond between the strides are something that are from Oda. With Uta, you definitely could have that also, but I don't think there's going to be anything other than that, and who knows, maybe Uta's dead. I don't know. But in terms of a Luffy ship, I think it has something there. I will put it I'll put it as a C. I think that if Uta was introduced into the story from the very get-go, I think that would have been a very strong contender for a Luffy ship. I really do. Luffy Yamato, they have great vibes together, but I don't think it's anything romantic. I would put, just because they have great vibes, very similar to Ace and Yamato. And in terms of a ship, if Oda was going this direction, do I think it's a good ship? I don't think so. Just because of how I view and interpret the way Oda writes his romance and writes his relationships. So I just don't know. I just don't know. I will leave it as a D. I do think it's on the low tier end in terms of ships, but yeah. So again, if I missed any ships, and I probably missed a big one that someone in the comments is going to tell me I missed, I apologize for that. I had to come up with this list very quickly. There's no such thing of this, and this is a single use tier list, so I can't save this because I don't want to make a count on this site. But like, yeah, those are my rankings of what I think are great ships in One Piece based off my interpretations, based off what I think is how Oda writes romances and how he writes successful romances within his story. So this is my ranking. Let me know, again, your opinion of these ships could be very different. But yeah, let me know. You know what? Before I go, I'll put Zoro Perona. Because aside from that, I will put it C. I don't think it should be above B. But yeah, let me know what you think in the comments below, and thank you so much for watching. And again, my interpretation could be very different from yours. Do not take this as like the way I think Oda will go and how Oda views these romances. Trust me, I can be very wrong. But at the end of the day, this is just how I view it. So let me know in the comments below how you view it, and if you think my my ranking is okay, at least. Not good, not great, just let me know if it's okay. And you could definitely disagree with it. Alright, I'll talk to you guys later. See you guys next time, alright? Bye-bye.